Quarantine team, I'm coming to you today to talk to you about engaging your core and how it's relative to low back pain. So I know a lot of times when starting a new fitness program, or maybe you're a veteran and you're always battling low back pain, there could be a couple culprits. First off, we're going to talk about the pelvic tilt in relation to low back pain. So if you turn to the side, some of us naturally stand, and we already kind of go into this. This is me, right? So you can see, I just ate breakfast, so I'm nice and bloated for you too. I typically stand this way. So my pelvis is tilted forward. I have an extreme arch in my low back, and this is just due to multiple things. Working in stilettos, teaching pole dancing for a long time, I was elevated like this and my pelvis was always here. Competing, we naturally go into that stance into a low back arch to stick out the booty and accentuate the glutes. And for those of us that have kids, or we've had kids and we've had our pelvis tilted this way to accommodate the growing belly, that's also another issue that sometimes doesn't correct itself. So it's something that can be corrected and worked on. Trust me, I still battle low back issues, but with daily practice and mindfulness about where your pelvis is in relation to what you're doing is very, very helpful. So we go here, we have this extreme arch. It just feels comfortable because this is our natural stance. You have to consciously tuck your pelvis in, right? And go to neutral. So this is neutral right here, where my hips are stacked over my knees, over my ankles. Feels super awkward. Like, I don't like it. All of a sudden I lose my booty gains, right? But if you do this, if you tend to have low back pain, you will notice that's kind of alleviates it, right? Like going here, I feel it immediately. It starts to flare up my low back. But as soon as I go to neutral, it kind of gets rid of it. So I invite you to practice that anytime you get into an exercise, or you're standing or you're walking and you wake up and your low back just starts to naturally hurt, is play around with like feeling that pelvic tilt. So I do this a lot when I teach class, to say, I want you to tuck your pelvis forward. And a lot of times if you're doing hip bridges and hip thrusts, you won't feel it in your glutes because you are posterior tilted, or you have an anterior pelvic tilt, where your hip bones are pointing this way instead of pointing this way. So play around with that, and then just work around like moving your hips around and kind of see where you notice that little spot light up, and then go the other way. You may just need to get in a little more hip mobility. So that's one word on finding your neutral, right? I'll say like find your neutral pelvis. That's right here. So when you're hip thrusting, imagine I'm laying on the ground and you're hip thrusting and you come up and you're really overarching, you should be pelvic tilting. So there is a difference. It takes some practice. There's going to be new tight muscles there that you're going to feel like, like I'm not getting much range of motion. But if you pelvic tilt, you will hit glutes more effectively than just like retching your back up and overarching your low back. It's more of a pelvic tilt. I will use the cue, like when you're laying on your back, imagine you have like a bowl of cereal in your lap and you want to tuck it and tilt it into your belly button. So that will also help when you're doing like bridges and hip thrusters. That's also a really good cue. Now, as far as when we say brace your abs, I pulled this up so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. When we say like brace your core or brace your abs, I want you to, you'll notice like if you just suck in, that's just pulling your belly in. Like there's a difference between bracing and squeezing and sucking in. I don't want you just sucking in your belly just to suck in your belly. I want you to pull your rib cage down and squeeze, and you'll see right away my obliques engage, my rib cage comes and knits together, and naturally I go into that neutral pelvic tilt. So when I go into a squat and I'm here, I take a deep breath of air, take a big sip of air, and I neutrally engage and I squeeze my core, and then I go down. And it's not to say that I'm like squatting tucked under like this, but I'm in a neutral spine instead of here. And then when you go down, you get a butt wink, right? If you are butt winking when you squat, it's because you're not engaging your core and you're getting too low. So you start to lose tension in your legs and it's going all into your low back. So bracing your core is imagine someone's gonna punch you in the tummy with a fist. What would you do? You would you would immediately exhale all your air out and get ready for that force. It's no different. So when you're laying on the floor doing ab work, and I say brace your core, you should not have any space under your back. You should be sealing your back to the floor, squeezing hard, exhaling all your air out. Now, you will notice you won't be able to get in as many reps. That's totally fine. This is not a race to do 100 reps like shit. This is a race to do good quality reps that are going to count. And that's why clients are always like, oh, we need to do more abs. We need to do more abs. No, we need to learn how to effectively engage our core, pull from the belly in towards your spine, squeeze, knit your rib cage together, come to a neutral spine, and think about that every time you're doing core work. It'll greatly impact your core, which will also help with your low back pain and also produce the effects that you want once you drop body fat to then show your abs. Like right now, I don't have a six pack going on by any stretch of the imagination, but when I get into contest prep and I get lean enough, my abs show, and people are like, oh my God, how much abs do you do? Honestly, you guys, I just started kind of doing some core work and some ab work because my low back has been firing up, but not necessarily for aesthetic reasons. Most of my core work comes from properly engaging before I go into things like squats, deadlifts, right? Any like lunges even. Lunges are super easy to go into that. This is sexy, right? That super exaggerated low back arch. So I tuck. It's going to shorten your range of motion, because your hip flexors are going to be a limiting factor, but it's going to make your legs work more and not fire up your low back. So if your pelvic bowl is spilling all of your cereal onto the floor, tuck under, keep your Lucky Charms in this pelvic bowl by tucking forward. So practice that. If you've been experiencing low back pain, it's going to be this section of your body here that you need to focus on when going into exercises. So executing impeccable form and just cleaning it up, engaging, knitting, neutral spine, pelvic tilt. Hopefully that was helpful.